Good evening again. Tonight we have a very friendly visitor, Raz, and I think it would be very nice if you could introduce yourself, Raz.
Good evening. My name is Raz. I'm a high school friend of Omri and fellow traveler. I am Swedish and I love the big world. Uh, I love to wander, both in mind and on foot. And I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity to be with you tonight here.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure, Raz.
Of course.
Thank
So
you.
this evening we want to talk about traveling. Now, traveling is a big word, but we are all travelers, all three of us. And I would like to ask you, Raz, what does traveling mean to you? How do you feel with the word traveling?
I'm worried I won't have enough time to really delve deep on this, but I feel that if I touch upon the most important part of this question, which is the philosophical question, maybe that will be enough. For me, traveling, it has been an integral part of my life, a big part of it actually. Both.
I would like to interrupt you. You were born. Where were you born?
So I was born in Sweden, and I lived abroad for many years, and also got to travel due to the fact I have family in a lot of places in the world, and also due to the fact that really my parents love to travel, and it's actually how they met. They both worked within the travel industry. So therefore, their love story began there, and mine continues. Um, I've been very fortunate to be living with my grandparents and family here in Sweden every summer when we lived abroad, and almost every summer, not every summer, which as a sum, a total sum, I would say is 1.5 year of my life.
What is the first recollection of traveling that you have?
When I was around 3 years old, my grandma actually was responsible for, I believe it was 3 years old or 4 years old, maybe a bit older. Don't I'm not sure on that part.
But you are too old to remember. I understand.
Exactly. My grandma actually was responsible for babysitting me, as my parents traveled to India for I believe something that was 2 or 3 weeks, and so I don't recollect this directly, but my parents recollected it as a challenging time for my grandma. Personally, my travel recollection, I remember being in third grade in Sweden, and we had this. We returned from summer vacation, and we had to represent what we've done during the summer. And I came with this little wooden box, which me together with my parents created, where I glued pictures of my trip to Eilat, which included a mineral stone from the Dead Sea. It included some Legos I also found in the Dead Sea. It included some Israeli candy, and it included some pictures from me diving. It was one of the first time I dived, which is a long time or lifetime hobby for me, as I still dive today. And I have 2 stars, which is like official diving license. I didn't advance any further because I didn't see any point with it, but I have been diving a lot ever since I was a kid.
Diving is
And
also a means of traveling into the bottom
it,
of the sea.
it
Now,
is, and
what were you looking for when you were diving?
I remember I've I've always been pretty calm in my life, but when I was a kid, I had a struggle with breathing due to my nose being very uh, how do you say it? I was like very allergic, and I recollect breathing underwater with this, tubes,
Yes,
and you have to maintain calm in order to retain a certain amount of oxygen for a longer time,
right.
and also so that you will be able to dive properly and not lose balance. So that's a hard or like a very meaningful memory of diving for me. And also at the bottom of the ocean, everything is much slower, and you need to be able to read other people in a sense without being able to express words. And even though you see a fish, which maybe is a scary one, you cannot lose your temper or lose your cool, because then you will lose oxygen. And I believe that's something that very stuck with me about traveling to the bottom of the ocean.
Now, many people travel. There's a whole movement. Traveling the world has become very popular. More and more people can afford to travel. Traveling has become cheaper in a way, and there are many ways of traveling. High class traveling, student traveling, mochilero traveling, all kinds of traveling. So, what, how would you define the importance of traveling? What does it add to you, if at all? Why are you so eager to keep on traveling? And you've done quite a lot of traveling in your days.
True. It's a good question. I think we as humanity have always been on the brink of trying to see what else there is out there. And that's like the root of traveling. If it is to advance civilization in a certain way, or gaining grains and stuff which uh, ancient civilizations maybe didn't have straight access to. Today, we take it very for granted, the globalization, but I can recollect plenty of conversations I've had with not that old people. We're talking about the 90s, where certain produce was not even sold in the supermarkets, which connects also to the point I want to talk about later on, traveling and produce in supermarkets. But I found I found it very fascinating that you there are so many things we take for granted about our reality, which is challenged every time we travel, due to the fact that some places have more than what we know of, and some places have less than what we know of. And you always come home with a certain sense of certain realizations, which allow you to live a richer day-to-day life too. If it's challenges you face when you backpack travel, and you realize how comfortable it is to have an apartment, or have a room even, or if it's just how people live in general, or the ways in which people interact, which changes from culture to culture, and yeah, we take very much for granted. So for me, traveling has always been a way to challenge my perspective on things and be more thankful, and also allow myself to enrich my perspective on life. Because I believe the more you are able to understand. First of all, you realize how little you know, but you're also more able to relate to more people. And I find the human connection you can develop when you have more background or more understanding is very necessary for us to develop relations in a good way.
Have you found the language barrier an impediment on your traveling, or did you get along with the languages that you can speak?
I believe that when you first begin to travel, that you have this certain anxiety about making everything right or having everything correct and not being able to just be. And the moment you realize that even the language barriers are part of something pretty interesting, in the sense that you learn to communicate with people without words, or you do with Google Translate. I sat in this one time with this old man. He was from Georgia or something, and Georgia, here in Europe.
Georgia,
Georgia, yeah.
North America, Georgia.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we had a whole conversation on Google Translate when we had connection on the internet, which was very, very interesting. At the end of the conversation, he actually invited me to come and work at his farm. I didn't take upon the invitation because it was a horse slaughtering farm for salami, or not salami, but the local sausages.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was Georgia or Belarus, actually. Sorry. But it was very interesting how we were able to reach that level of conversation through an app, and even gotten invited to come and work with his family in this farm. He showed me pictures of the farm and the family and everything. And so the language barrier, I've never really met it. Uh, However, I think the real language barrier you can find sometimes is when you try to explain for people what you've gone through in life or what you've experienced during your travels. And then you realize that no matter what words you use, some people don't hear, uh, don't really hear what you're saying, but they hear what they reflect on themselves.
What can you benefit or learn from traveling that you cannot learn at school?
Well, first of all, I think seeing things in real life, and there's a certain layer to it which cannot really be explained, uh, and sometimes you just I was walking through a market a few weeks back and got very sentimental. Why? Because I smelled this. There was this scent which reminded me. It took me back to my grandma's home, and I was so surprised by the scent because I wasn't expecting it, and was just walking the street. And I feel those kind of things are not something that you can write upon paper. A scent is maybe you can spray a bottle of champagne, like perfume on the paper, but uh, the music, for example. I was in Sardinia a few months back. There was this lady singing native Sardinian songs in this very cool place, and just I can like think of this memory and I hear it resonate around me, but it's not something I would find on YouTube or even feel the same listening to on YouTube. Although today it's very convenient that a lot is actually transcribed to uh, the internet. So that's what is the difference between school uh, and real life, that you get to experience things and smell things. Smell is really, really integral part of the experience, and the feeling on the skin when you are in somewhere humid, or if you're sitting by the fire after you've been out in the ski and the snow and you've been really, really cold. Uh, there is the sensory feelings, which are not only what the eye see or what you hear, but much more. And also something about the spontaneity of experiencing things, which doesn't happen the same way when you sit and study something that has thoroughly been examined before. So that's, in my opinion.
What was the most fascinating experience that you encountered in your travels?
Most fascinating experience. I think each time brings a different kind of fascinating experience. Each time you, I think, really realize how much is connected or how many
But you've
things.
been to many countries and you've seen a lot of things. Is there something that you saw on your travels that struck you to an extent that you went, wow, that you had never seen such a thing, you never experienced, you never believed such a thing could exist? Something that is living in your memories as an experience that is a lifetime experience.
It's hard to say on point, but there are certain moments which you feel that you can experience some things during a trip or something, and maybe I'm just being philosophical, but sometimes you experience things which you felt was what you were supposed to experience just in this time of your life. And I think that's maybe something. I can't put my finger on one certain thing because there's many events in my lifetime, uh,
But is
which
it something physical, a view, a landscape, a smell, a food, a feeling, an excitement? Try to define something that struck you with all your senses, that it left a lifetime memory.
I think really for, in that sense, what I said earlier, about the spontaneous things that happen, it can also be. I'm very sorry. I'm kind of stuck because I'm really thinking about what, because there are many things that come to mind, but I feel like sometimes uh, there are many variations of that, feeling. But I remember the feeling of sitting back on an airplane on the way home, uh, which is something that is very, very strong feeling, returning to your home country after a longer, extended time. For example, when I've been living with my grandparents for over the summer, the return to reality or the landing, and maybe, for
East
example,
West, they say East West, home is best. Yes.
true.
Quite
Uh,
interesting, that you say that I, the traveler, the most exciting thing for me is the landing back home, which is a quite extraordinary answer. I would expect you to say, well, I've seen this and that and the other, and it left a tremendous impression on me. And then finally, at last, you say, well, the feeling of landing back at home, and you cannot feel this, experience this feeling unless you go abroad and then you come back. Because if you're always there, you're always there. And I can understand you. Yes, it is a very strong feeling, the coming back home.
Also, in a sense that when you've been gone for a longer time,
Yes.
that suddenly everything is like a big vacuum. And that's something that many travelers share, that when you arrive at home after a longer time, then you land into this reality which you love and everything, but you also kind of think of what do you implement from what you've learned or what you've heard into your day-to-day life. And that feeling of landing also in your homeland, and feeling those simple things as, you know, the scent of gasoline or the taxi drivers, or, you know, you can hear clapping on the airplane, or you know, you can feel the humidity of Tel Aviv, or just going to the gas station and getting a fused tea or a grape juice, you know, which maybe I haven't had in a long time. It's all of these simple things which are very, very nice. And actually, if you really want to point out something specific,
Yes.
when you travel with Elal, the moment you land, there's a song by Arik Einstein playing, always, every time. Do you know? Have you
No.
noticed? It's Kama Tov Shabbat Abaita, usually. They play the same.
Well,
And,
I landed with Elal a week ago.
and they usually they put that. I've experienced that plenty of times. And they put Kama Tov Shabbat Abaita, and you land.
How good you came home. Yes.
Exactly. And it's a nice song. It's very also sentimental. Arik Einstein is known to be the nostalgic Israeli character, and really landing. I feel like that's one of the most biggest experiences, because no matter how overwhelming or grandiose your travels were, that. So you asked me a few questions, and I think maybe it's time for me to throw a question at you. What
Good.
is your earliest memory of traveling, and who was it with? And do you remember what was the earliest food experience you've had traveling?
Well, start with food. I already told you that food is not my priority. But my early experience of traveling was when I was about 3 years and some months. My mother also met my father by traveling. She came to Israel to visit an uncle of hers that was living here, and the connection between him and her father uh, was cut during the War of Independence in 1948, and then in 1950 she came to this country, and that's how she met my father. So my parents married in London and came back to live in Israel. And when I was 3 and my sister was about a year and 3 or 4 months, she decided to take us both to visit her parents who had never seen us. So we flew to London. It was quite an ordeal in those days. I'm talking about the early 50s, 1954 or 5. We went by plane. We landed. I only discovered that later in my life that we landed in Germany, which was for me terrible. In those days, people never went to Germany. So we landed in Frankfurt, and from Frankfurt we went to London. And frankly, I have to tell you that I don't have any recollections of my staying in London. Only years later I saw pictures and tried to think whether I remember the visit or not. But I have no real recollections of this visit to London. But as you said, when we came back and we landed, and my grandfather from Israel, came to pick us up at the airport, I remember going back home and saying, and it was very early in the morning, and the sun was coming out, and I remember this distinctly, how we were driving in the car, and I said, you know, Mom, as we are approaching home, it was becoming lighter and lighter and lighter. And the landing home is what I remember from this first traveling abroad. My next travel was when I was 12. I went to London to study there for a term or 2 terms. And this was already something else. From this visit, where I stayed with my grandparents, I remember a lot. And it's quite a markstone in my life. I remember a lot from that visit, and it influenced my life. I studied at school. I was living with my grandparents. It was the first opportunity to get to know my family, a big family in London, all the aunts and uncles and cousins. And it was a wonderful experience, which I thank my parents for thinking of sending me, which was also something quite unusual, to take me out of my school here in Israel and send me abroad for quite a long period of time. And then I traveled at the age of 17. I went to America, which was also quite extraordinary in those days. I was with an exchange program with Minneapolis, Minnesota. All my travels ever since, I feel that each and every travel abroad enriched my life, my ideas, my thoughts. For example, in 1968, when I went to States, it was all the conventions of the Republicans and the Democrats, and I learned a lot about American politics and how it works and how the system of the bipartisan democratic system works and how the conventions work. And I was fascinated watching TV. The next time I came to America, there was the hearing over the Watergate scandal and all I was glued to television watching all the process of the hearing. And later on, I understood as a lawyer that I used all these techniques of cross-examination, etc. So each and every trip added a lot to my understanding of the world, the way other people think, the way other politics act, the way, the kind of living, an experience. Every trip was a great experience of learning and learning and learning. And it's an endless process of absorbing things that you will never see at home. And it adds and adds and adds to the way you are shaped. You see things and you experience things that you do not have the opportunity to experience in your own country.
It's true. It's really, there is a lot of things we get exposed to which we don't experience in our reality. Actually, it's an interesting also topic because another friend of mine, he also, I, I've been nicknamed the tourist
Okay.
in my own land. He actually said, this friend of mine, he was really surprised that I was aware of a lot of things going on in my own country, which he wasn't aware of, or he lacked the curiosity to find out about. And it's made me really it made me think about it really, that a lot of things, and maybe that's also what is so meaningful with that connection of landing at home, as you said, which is an early recollection on your part.
Yeah.
And also for me is an earlier recollection, because that's maybe a moment where you allow yourself to see your own country with new eyes.
Another thing which I wanted to point out, which I think in this late travel that I had with Omri is the fact that things that you see here are not the same when you with your feet on the ground. We get all sorts of television reports like what's happening in Europe and how Europe is looking upon the war in Gaza, etc., and the demonstrations, etc., and you know that when you are in those places and when you come to the places where things are happening, you find out that there is a greater discrepancy between what they tell you on TV or how the reporters bring the news to you. And when you are there, you see that things are quite different from what you had expected. And when we came back, so many people asked me, "Weren't you afraid? Isn't it troubling to travel in these days?" And I said, "No, we didn't encounter any anti-Semitic events, or we were not harassed, or uh, so." Those who think that they can see the world, like I had an old uncle in England, and when I was 12 and I was in England, I said to him, "Uncle Henry, how come you've never been abroad?" He said, "I don't need to travel abroad. I can sit in my armchair here at home, watch telly, uh, and read books, and I can travel the world in my armchair." And I argued with him, but I wasn't old enough and wise enough to to make my argument. But now I know that sitting in your armchair watching TV and watching the world go by is never, never, never the same as being in all these places and touching them and watching them and smelling them and feeling them. It's a whole different experience. You do not understand that until you take the trip and you get to the places and you get the feeling of each and every place you visit. It's a different world.
There's a certain fear, really, of losing control when talking about traveling abroad, and I feel also it's especially in with older ages. I don't know how old your uncle was, but it's something that you can feel. A lot of people have this fear of not having control. Um, Actually, there's a really good movie about Anthony Bourdain, which is a known cook.
Yes.
He ran this long-running series on CNN about countries he traveled to and he ate at, and it was a very known series called Places Unknown, or I maybe I'm saying it wrong, but one of the main things they touched upon on a documentary about him. He died actually a few years ago,
Yeah.
and one of the things they touched upon was really the fact that Anthony Bourdain used to be this book smart kid, which used to read a lot about countries and places and experiences and adventures, but he never experienced them themselves.
Mm.
And the moment he started doing that, his whole personality changed. And although he was very wise about all the places he had heard of,
Mhm.
he had this other kind of maybe humbleness or something when he really saw the world for what it was. And
Well,
maybe
go ahead.
maybe I think maybe Omri, you want to upon that question or upon that topic really of seeing the world and also reading about it or hearing about it. For example, we went to Madrid together and watched one of the greatest, maybe controversial artists in the world today, and seeing him live was a very extraordinary experience. in a sense. It was nothing to in comparison to hearing Pink Floyd albums.
Mm-hmm.
Although we've grown up hearing them many times, is that something you feel rings? Is it true to you too?
I think you remember how I was back then, on that day, on March this last year already. And I do believe when I'm looking back on that concert, it was one of the most happiest days of my life because I got so much excitement and looking forward to see this concert. And I had this dream for so many years to see this artist alive in front of me. And when we got the chance to do it, and we did it on the very front row,
Hell yeah.
the goosebumps I've got and the feeling I've got and the sounds, how it impact me and influence me, it's one of those very important steps of my life that shape who am I and who I become as a grow-up man because it's influence my persona in so many ways that when I see this man in front of me after so many years of dreaming, seeing him live, and I make this dream come true with you, that we share the same love to the same artist, it was magnificent, it was incredible. And I think those experiences in life could happen only when you're abroad, when only when you travel abroad and only when you open to the existence of culture and open to gain knowledge.
Well, we had a similar experience with Mozart's Requiem at the Saint Sulpice Cathedral in Paris, which was an extremely strong and fascinating, a breathtaking experience to listen to Mozart in this church. The acoustics, the sound, the choir, everything was so strong, and especially on the last day of the year, and then going from there to the celebrations of the New Year at the Champs-Élysées and all the firecrackers and everything. It was an evening full of magnificent events following each other, which was concentrated in a few hours. So much excitement, so much sound, so much happening, so many colors and things that this cannot happen if you're not there at the spot. This was a lifetime experience, even for me, and I've seen things. It was fascinating.
The fact
Exactly.
that you can really summarize so many like meaningful events in your life to just a few hours or maybe a few minutes is something I don't think we reflect on that often. There are many events in our life. It can also be, sad events too
Of course.
that develop within the instance of maybe a few hours or few minutes, and it can leave a mark on you for so much longer time.
I was talking about that in one of our previous episodes, the meaningful moments of our lives, which are sometimes not so many, can be counted on one or two hands, and these are really moments that leave a marking on your soul and you can never forget. And this was one of these moments. This concert was a moment not to be forgotten. Yes, and your concert in Madrid, etc., etc. One of these things that leave a sign for for a lifetime.
I think it really also brings us to the question of what can be um, reinvented, or what cannot be what can be replaced and what cannot be replaced, because some things just cannot be replaced. Although you have all the ingredients of a certain food, or you have the same album, the same song playing, the acoustics of a certain building, or
Yeah.
the way, or the feeling, or the breeze that you have in a certain location, or the service you had at a certain restaurant or hotel, or
Mm.
the people you were with, uh, is not something that you can. Just the amount of change physiologically that occurs when a person realizes that he is on a break or is somewhere else
Mm.
allows for the change in mindset, which I think is a significant thing in the traveling itself.
So, what was the best dish you had anywhere in the world, and why?
I haven't had it yet. I'm
Huh?
looking forward to travel to Japan. That's
Yeah.
a big one on my list. Um, but I think there is a lot of realizations about the many similarities of food within cross culture, which I found was very interesting. Also when my interest for food grown, realizing, oh wait, how can I make this at home, which was very meaningful. Uh, I think there are a few very like meaningful moments of food, but it's not traveling. That's with the family, I would say.
Okay.
Actually, honestly, truthfully, Omri,
Yes.
what would you say about this? You, in the sense of eating abroad, I think you on your part, you've been more oriented to trying out the finer things in life, in the sense of restaurants and so on. Is that something you agree on, or what is your opinion on it?
I'm always seeking to find a new taste, a new texture, new smells in life. And I think in each and every country I've been to so far, I gained so much experience and knowledge and flavors to get to know them from a different kind of view and from different recipes. So I always keep developing and get to know more food. So if you ask me what is the best cuisine in the world, I don't have an answer.
But obviously, when you go to another country, one of the ingredients, so to speak, of the culture of the country is the food they eat there. I mean, in order to get an overall picture of a certain country, you have to taste the food of that country. So you get it's a part of the culture of the country. So without eating the local food, your experience is not full.
True.
Yes.
I think maybe London, in a sense, was actually very surprisingly
Mm-hmm.
good in that sense, because I also went to really nice bars. I went to the Conyahu Hotel, which are very known for their martinis, and the show and everything went into this cocktail. We're not even talking about food here.
Yes.
Was very grand, and then you walk in the markets, if it's in Spain or if it's in Italy, or even in the chillier London, or in Poland, and you have these smells. For example, in Poland, you have these smoked cheeses. I don't remember the name of it or recall it, but there's this smoky cheese.
Yes.
Uh, it's something that I very sense or very, very strongly related to trips. And That's actually a question for you, Atzmon. What
Yeah.
is like the earliest sense you can remember, maybe recollecting, or do you remember a moment you smelled something, or is there a certain smell you associate with something which you experienced during your travels, or even in life in general, which you can think of that has very, very like strong association to something? For me, for example, I can talk about my grandma and her perfume, or maybe it's the way something like a certain alleyway in a house smells like, or a dish. What is it for you?
Well, I remember, for example, my grandfather in London was a hat maker, and he was working. He had a little workshop in the cellar of his house, and I can even now feel the dampness, the smell of the dampness in the cellar, this wet smell of damp. And I don't know how to explain it in words, but if I go down into a cellar, I would immediately feel this smell, and it would immediately associate myself with this, watching my grandpa uh, uh, making these hats he used to make, for example. Or there was a cellar in the old house of my grandparents in Israel. They lived in a big old house, and I used to go down to the cellar, and there was a big barrel of wine which was empty from wine, and at the bottom of it, all the older generations stored their love letters at the bottom of this barrel. And I
So,
remember myself uh, bending with my belly on the edge of the barrel and trying to go down and actually fish those letters from the bottom of the barrel. And I remember the smell of this barrel, with suffocated with wine and oak. And wow, this is a smell an odor I will never forget, combined with what I found there. And I wrote a poem about it. I was reading love words, which I was not only love to understand, but the smell I could understand, yes.
wow, that sounds like a really strong memory, actually. Like,
Uh-huh.
It's
I love that. That's a cool one.
it's amazing
Okay.
how smells and taste reflect to our memories and brings us back
Very,
the
very
memories.
strongly, in my opinion. Smells have the sense of the smelling has a lot to do. It brings back memories, good ones, bad ones, of course.
But because we're
Well,
running out of time, I want to ask both of you last question for
o-
tonight.
okay.
And it's a hard one, so deep think about that. What is the destination you want to discover or reach and you didn't? And what is your favorite destination that you already reached and why? From
Oh,
a
you
point.
start, Raz.
I've had this love relationship for very long with a place I've never been to, which is Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this. I feel that this place is somewhere I need to be at some point in my life. Um, but both this place and also the Azores, actually, there are two places I feel somehow are in the timeline of my lifetime have a significant place,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm excited about the thought of seeing how the timeline of my life will develop and where these places meet me in my life. Because currently I won't be there, but when I will be there, I wonder what that point in life looks like. And I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it.
And where was your most significant trip of your lifetime so far?
I've returned to New York many times,
Right.
and I love New York. And I've been to more exotic places, but New York, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense, is a
Influenced you the
place.
most.
Exactly. I was very luckily able to be there in a few different circumstances. One of which was actually presenting a movie I made at school,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which the showing of this movie, it was at the AMC theater in Times Square. It was a very, very, very strong experience for me. Um, and one of the things that I remember the most or recall is actually watching the newest Blade Runner. Um and walking out from the movie uh, when it's raining outside and New York looks like the futuristic city of Blade Runner because it's raining and there's reflection on the glass in the buildings surrounding me. So New York is a place I most definitely remember very well. Uh, and also, I think Jamaica, I would also say, is a very cool place because I've grown up on Bob Marley a lot throughout my childhood, and being at the play in his home where he grew up and visiting his grave, actually, it was a very significant moment in my life.
Dear Atzmon, out of all the countries you have been to, which country left the most significant impression on you, and which country would you most like to visit in the future?
Well, it's hard to say which country left because impressions, it depends what. Some countries offer you their culture, other countries offer you their landscape. It depends what you are looking for. If you are going, if you're traveling in order to see views and landscapes and nature, or you're looking for museums and cultures, so each country has different things to offer. So in means of landscape, I traveled in Georgia. I liked the landscape very much,
Mm-hmm.
and the mountains and the waters and the hills. And as far as which country, I also love New York, as Raz said. New York is an outstanding city. It's the apple. It's really something different. Although the buildings are so high that you can't see the sky, but it's a vibrant city. It's in the move all the time, and it's very fascinating. I like London and I love Paris. I think Paris was quite a surprise. It has it has all in it. It has culture, it has buildings, it has food, it has senses, it has. I was very impressed with Paris, actually. It left. I've been to Paris before, but and I remembered many things, but this time Paris was very special, I think, because of the timing, because we were there at the end of the year and all the decorations and lights and happenings and all the events around the end of the year were very special. And where would I like to go to? I said I've never been to the Far East. I would like to go to the Far East, um, to Japan, to India, I've never been to India. India is a country which is very fascinating, both landscape-wise and culture-wise and religious-wise, and it has many things to offer. I hope I will get there one day.
We spoke briefly about Tokyo.
Tokyo, we spoke about Tokyo, but I haven't read enough about Tokyo to be wanting to go there.
Mm-hmm.
I have to study the matter. But India, I've heard a lot about. Many people from Israel have been to India and came. Well, there's stories of all kinds. Those who left their soul in India and those who want to go back there. But it's a different culture, and you have to be there in order to understand the Indian way of life. It's something which is completely different from our Western way of thinking. So India, but my days are fading, and I hope I will still be able to make it. And if not at this time of my life, maybe in the next
Recognition.
reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
Yes, I'm kidding. But yes, I would definitely put India on my list if it were feasible. I hope it will.
What about New Zealand and Australia?
Well, New Zealand and Australia also. Listen, where would I not like to go to? I mean, every country has a lot to offer. And if you go somewhere with the desire to learn as much as you can,
Mm-hmm.
I think each and every country on the list of the world can be fascinating. If you come with an open heart and with an open pocket. Yes.
It's a good one.
Yes.
I like it.
Gentlemen, I really appreciate this talk with you, and I wish all our listeners to go and travel and explore the world. There's many out there to
Absolutely.
see.
Absolutely.
Amen. No
Don't
excuses.
ever think that you can see the world in your armchair. This is, don't believe anyone who tells you that.
It's
Yes,
true. Make believe. Make it possible.
right.
Even on a student budget, it's possible. It's
Yeah,
feasible.
yes, there's many ways to travel. Many ways
There are
to
many
travel.
ways.
Many,
Be a tourist. Discover your own town, your own country. Begin there and go from there onwards.
right.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely. Good night.
Good night.